What do Stephen King, Andy Weir, and Blake Crouch all have in common? Well, their works are being adapted for the big or small screen. And you know what that means. It's time for another Adaptation News. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. I'm a composer, now also a booktuber. You can find my music in the Wheel of Time Season 2, His Dark Materials Season 3, and the newly released The Hills of Tanchico, the song that is featured in the Wheel of Time Season 3. So, I've been meaning to do an adaptation news for a while now. This is Adaptation News Episode 5, where we talk about all the books that you love and their adaptations for the big and small screen by somebody who works in the adaptation space. Now, I'm a composer, but I also work on a lot of different adaptations. I mentioned The Wheel of Time. I've mentioned His Dark Materials. I've also kind of gone into the multimedia space, working on an official main theme for Philip Chase's wonderful fantasy trilogy, the Edan trilogy. I wrote a theme for Lightbringer by Brent Weeks on the official companion album. So I know a thing or two when it comes to adaptations because I work in the business and I know what it means to read between the lines, if that makes sense. A lot of times you see something announced and then it goes silent for weeks, months, or even years, right? Never hear about it again. So what does that mean? What's actually going on behind the scenes? I'm here to kind of reveal that to you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And if you like this kind of video, please like and subscribe. And now, on to the movies or TV shows. So the first one I want to talk to you about is actually a sci-fi adaptation that has been kind of put through the ringer for about a decade or so. It was first optioned, I think, maybe 10 years ago, and finally things are moving forward. And I'm talking about William Gibson's seminal work, Neuromancer, basically ushering in that kind of cyberpunk movement. Set in the future, the novel follows Henry Case, a washed-up hacker hired for one last job, which brings him in contact with a powerful artificial intelligence. So, obviously, this was written in the 80s, so things could be a little dated, but we are dealing with AI right now. So it's interesting. It was very prescient for the times, and I think there's a chance to update it and make it feel like it belongs now while retaining some of the classic parts of books written during that time. Now, this is directed by Tim Miller, who is known for Love, Death, and Robots and Deadpool. Be very interesting to see what he kind of brings to this space. And it has a budget of $70 million. So it was considered development unknown as of April 16th, 2024. So, you know, whenever that happens is kind of put on indefinite hiatus, but we have some good news. And the good news is I pulled up IMDb Pro, which is kind of an industry trade publication, which allows you to see where projects actually are in the mix. And you get to see when people are added on. And I saw that just today, Paul Beeson, supervising plasterer, who worked on the Batman in 2022, has been added on to the crew. And that's great because that means that they're trying to get all their VFX, their practical effects in a row so that they can launch into pre-production. This is a good place for something like this to be because this is very ambitious in scope. It has to be. You know, anything cyberpunk, anything where they're trying to update something from the 80s and make it feel like it belongs in the here and now and also feel cutting edge, that needs cutting edge tech, right? That needs cutting edge practical effects. So it's going to take time for something like this to kind of come to fruition. But it is really good news when you start to see more people added because even if it says development unknown, even if you haven't heard much about it, that means things are going on behind the scenes. And behind the scenes is what we are looking for when we want to see what is really happening with an adaptation, right? Is it moving forward? Is it not? So that is the first piece of adaptation news. The second piece of news is Blake Crouch, author of such works as Dark Matter, Recursion, Upgrade, and his seminal Wayward Pine series. By the way, I've read all 6 of those. If you haven't read his books, you have to check out Blake Crouch. He is a master of the technological thriller. He is known as kind of like the modern day Michael Crichton. So if you liked more of the science-y aspects of those techno thrillers, then you'll probably really enjoy Blake Crouch. I first heard about him during Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, talking about him ad nauseum, and it kind of came on my radar. And everything I've read of his, I've loved. So I was very excited when I saw that an adaptation of his other work, Famous, was happening. Now, what is Famous about? Lance Dunquist has the face of a movie star. Not just any movie star. Lance has been mistaken for Hollywood star James Jansen 228 times, and now Lance is about to go to LA to make his dream come true, no matter what it takes. Very interesting. I actually haven't read Famous. Have you read it? Let me know in the comments. But it sounds like it talks a little bit about, as far as a social commentary might be considered, the price of fame, what people do to get there, even if they have to pretend they're something they're not. I kind of love that. Zac Efron has been cast as the lead, Lance Dunquist. He is playing 2 roles, though. IMDb here doesn't really specify what those roles are, but it is very exciting to see that there is something happening with that. Also, it has officially, as of March 20th, 2025, gone into post-production. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, post-production is when they do the editing, they do the VFX, they do composing, they do sound, they do color grading, and all the final bits that take, a film that would belong on a cutting room floor and really putting it together into a presentation that you could all watch. So this is the final stage in the process. It's a long process, though. Post-production, oftentimes for studio projects, can take months and a long time. I remember when I was working on The Wheel of Time, for instance, we worked on that for like 6 to 9 months. For just the music side of it. So you can imagine how extensive these post-production processes can get. But of course, now that it's in post, that means this thing is definitely coming out, and we will probably have a release date pretty soon. And I will let you know as soon as we do have a release date for any of you Blake Crouch fans. The third bit of adaptation news is the adaptation of Murderbot. Now, Murderbot is about a sentient robot. This was written by Martha Wells. It's a series of a few books. I read the first one so far. It is being developed as an Apple TV series, and it had been in post-production as of July 8th, 2024. Now, this taping, it is April 8th, 2024. So you can imagine how long those post processes take. Well, my friends, for all of you Murderbot fans, there is an actual release date, and as of IMDb Pro's mentioning, it will be May 16th, 2025 on Apple TV Plus. And this is very exciting for any of you Murderbot fans, but also for sci-fi, because Apple TV has a penchant for doing sci-fi really well. They have the Foundation series, they have Dark Matter, the Blake Crouch one I was telling you about. They're really good with taking their time to do things right. They have Silo, also by Hugh Howey, which was based on his Wool Silo series. And so they are really good with doing sci-fi, so I have a good feeling that this will be great. And there were some shortcomings I felt like about Martha Wells' first entry. I haven't read more of it, so if it gets better, let me know in the comments as well. But I'm excited to see what Apple does with it, because even the shortcomings in Silo, I felt like they handled really well. So I'm excited to see that. Let me know if you are too. Now, the next piece of news is by my favorite author, Stephen King. As you can tell from the shelf back here, I have a whole shelf dedicated to the man because he's my favorite. And so anything adaptation-wise by Stephen King, I have to check out. And so I was very excited when one of my favorites of his, The Long Walk, was being adapted. Now, this is another one that has been put through the runaround. It had been with New Line previously. Now it is finally with Lionsgate. It debuted at CinemaCon in Las Vegas on Tuesday. So very brand new information, you guys. And the studio has revealed a release date. So this is a Francis Lawrence directed film, and it's going to hit theaters in September 12th. I'm very happy that it's hitting theaters, because theaters have been suffering a lot in the last few years. And anytime a Stephen King adaptation gets a theatrical run, which I think more should do that. I think Salem's Lot could have benefited from a theatrical run. I think there's other ones that could have benefited from a theatrical run. So it is always very exciting when that happens. Now, what is The Long Walk about? So this is actually not the first Stephen King book to be published, but it was the first one he wrote. He wrote it as a teenager. So he kind of wrote it when he was at the same age of some of the boys in this particular novel. So this book was eventually published under his pen name, Richard Bachman. The Long Walk is described as a dystopian thriller centering on the contestants of a grueling and vicious annual walking contest that requires 100 boys to keep a certain pace without stopping. If they do, they receive a warning. If it happens again, they are eliminated and killed. So very dystopian, very Hunger Games-esque, I guess you could say. And you would think, okay, it's like 2 hours of people walking. Why would this be interesting at all? The characters, you guys. Stephen King writes characters like no other, I think. And he's so able to make you care about each particular one. And as some of them start dropping off, you really care about them, even if they're on the page for a few pages at a time. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for Lionsgate. and for the team in charge of this is to be able to do justice to the characterization, because I think if you don't care, it just becomes some throwaway dystopian wallpaper movie, I like to call it. So I think it's very important that they get the characters right. I'll be very interested to see how they handle that. But it is very exciting for Stephen King fans nonetheless. So that, as I mentioned, is going to be released on widescreens September 12th. Another piece of CinemaCon news for a long-awaited adaptation of Andy Weir's seminal work, Project Hail Mary. I've personally read it. I love it. And when I heard that Ryan Gosling was going to be the lead, I thought, hey, that's a pretty good casting, actually. And I think, a lot of the time is spent with just the one actor, and then some other stuff happens I don't want to spoil. Actually, this article spoils that little bit, so if you don't want to know more, please don't look at the rest of this article. But if you're curious, you could find that out there. It's not a major spoiler, but I always like to let you know just in case. So Amazon MGM Studios kicked off CinemaCon with a trailer, an extended look at Project Hail Mary. Unfortunately for all of us thespians, we have to wait and to see it, but it seems like it got good reception, and it is very exciting because this makes it a little bit more real. You know how I was telling you that sometimes adaptations go in limbo for years or sometimes even decades? It is a thing that happens all too often. So until you start to see something like this where they're putting money into promoting it, nothing feels quite real. So it is nice to see this. If you haven't read Project Hail Mary, by the way, it is a beautifully paced book. And since this is a book channel, I got to talk about the book aspect of it. But Andy Weir does such a good job making you care about this one lone character in outer space. Seems like it could be boring, he's not interacting with a ton of people or something like that. But you feel for the guy, and you feel for the guy through his inner monologue. And it's really, really interesting how that all develops and kind of evolves throughout the course of the book. So definitely check out that book, and I'm excited to check out the movie as well. And the last piece of adaptation news for this segment is an interesting one. I'm not really sure how to think about it. I would love to know in the comments what you think about it. But it is that Meryl Streep is in talks to play Aslan in Greta Gerwig and Netflix's Narnia movie. Now, they had announced this movie. I mentioned it in a previous adaptation news update. And it's interesting because I really don't know what to make of that information. I mean, don't get me wrong, Meryl Streep is an awesome actress, and I'm sure she'll slay any role that she does. It's just not necessarily who I would have pictured voicing Aslan, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. I would love to know what you think about this. I think Greta Gerwig working on it will be really interesting as well. So I'm excited to see what happens with this, because I remember reading the Narnia books growing up, and it was like kind of the first fantasy I ever read. So it really kind of made me open my doorway to what is possible in fantasy, and I really remember enjoying those books. I saw the original Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie, and it was really fun. I haven't seen the other adaptations. I've heard they're kind of a mixed bag. I don't know if you've all checked it out, but it'll be interesting to see this kind of reboot and see what Netflix does with it, hopefully with a proper budget and, giving proper attention to detail and doing adaptations the right way. I feel like Netflix can have a hit or miss when it comes to adaptations, but I'm excited to see it nonetheless. So let me know what you think about this smorgasbord of an adaptation news. It was kind of all over the map today. But yeah, reading tastes are varied, adaptation, news is varied, and variety is the spice of life, I always like to say. So it's always fun to chat about this stuff with you all, and I hope you enjoyed this. I want to keep doing this more regularly. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more or less of this. This channel is your channel as much as it is mine, and I want to make sure that I'm always providing value for you guys and that you enjoy it. So if you like this kind of video, please like and subscribe. Please feel free to watch it all the way through. That helps the YouTube algorithm push it out to the people that would want to see it. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. Thank you so much for watching. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other. I will see you as always on the next video. Take care.